Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters. I'm your host, Matthew Byrne. So, this episode is another one in our series as guides to adding production value to your events. I know some people hear production value and they think, oh, I've got to spend more money. But what I will say is that it's not about what you spend on your events, but how you spend. And so, this series of podcast episodes is a way to help you with some tips, tricks, and deep dives on how we add production value to events and how you can do that in your day-to-day event production journey. Okay. So if you're a new listener to this podcast, please subscribe at productionvaluematters.com or rate us on any one of the listening platforms you might be on, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Okay. So in this episode, I want to talk about using technology creatively. Generally speaking, tech, whether that's lighting, audio, or video technology, has gotten a lot more affordable. And I know some listeners are probably hearing me say that and go, oh, yeah, except my budgets have gotten thinner and thinner over the last couple of years. Certainly, that's an effect of supply chain management and the economy at large. And one of the biggest contributing factors to that has always been the labor cost. But a lot of event technology has gotten more affordable as the technology development has sort of settled over the last couple of years. And I'll use the story of LED tile, which when LED tiles first became really popular, it was extremely expensive and in very low supply. So a lot of the times the cost for it had to be inflated, mostly because a lot of audiovisual rental companies will use a specific metric that I'd like to teach you, and it's called weekly return on rental. For those of you who want a little bit of math, the basic understanding of weekly return on rental is I spent X amount of money to put this in my inventory. And when I did that, I have to target a certain percentage of that value as my weekly return on the rental revenue from that. So back in the day, I used to work for a big, huge audiovisual global company, and they went and invested in a lot of LED tile. The reason that they did this, obviously, was to stay ahead of the competition, make sure that they could fulfill the increasing demand from some of their larger clients. So what was funny is that they had this asset management system that would do some automatic calculations on weekly return on rental. And so it would spit out a per tile price that was often overinflated because they spent quite a lot of money on it. And it had, let's say, some difficulty catching up with the market conditions as more supply hit the market. So we would always have to adjust the price. The point is that, like, right now, if we want to pick on LED technology as a target right now, LED tile, there are more and more manufacturers out there. A lot of companies made significant investments in LED over the last 10 or 15 years, and especially during the pandemic, because that was kind of the only product that they could put on an event. So now the market actually has quite a lot of LED tile and a lot of choice and a lot of different parameters that you can use to be able to create impact. So now we're getting into a space where it's becoming generally affordable. It has gone through, I think it's the Schweizberg curve, the one that says, hey, early adopters pay a lot of money and the demand suddenly goes up, and then it sort of settles. And then there's a downward curve on that technology adoption curve where the price starts going down and the usage stays constant. And that's where we are in that for LED as an example. So there is an advantage right now that if you want to add more production value to your event, you can do so by adding a big LED screen, and it's becoming more and more affordable. And now it's much more flexible. The technology is constantly improving and constantly getting a little bit better. It's actually gotten to a point where the millimeter measurement, which is when you look at an LED tile and it says 2.5 millimeter, that's the distance between each LED or light emitting diode. The smaller that measurement is, the more densely packed the pixels are, the clearer and sharper the image is. And so you now have the ability to find stuff on the market that is 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter. And this was something somebody said to me recently. We were pitching on a show and designing something for a large conference in Las Vegas. And I remember one of the chief operating officers of the company, we suggested a 3.9 millimeter tile or a 2.6. And I kind of laughed out loud when he said, well, 3.9 millimeter is a cheap tile for a cheap application. And considering where we all started with LED tile as an example, where sort of the higher end product was 6 or maybe 5 millimeter, like that was like the unbelievable new technology on the block, to personify 3.9 millimeter as a budget tile for a budget event, is how he put it, was a little shocking to me. But the reality is that technology is constantly changing. So going back to the idea of weekly return on rental, the ROR has to be much higher than most technology, or at least it used to be, because every 6 months there was a new LED tile that was coming on the market with a new improvement, and the shelf life was really, really short on all of that product. So you had to make sure that your return was higher than, say, lighting equipment, which a conventional spotlight fixture, their weekly return on rental target was 1.5% per week versus LED tile, which had to be 3.6%, which is more than double the return per dollar on that. And that was simply a mathematical formula that says, look, we're not going to be able to hold this asset as long as we can hold, say, a conventional lighting fixture, because that conventional lighting fixture can stay in our stock and be useful for 6 or 7 years, whereas the LED tile, maybe we got a year on it before something new comes out and we have to replace it. Anyway, so what's interesting in the industry is that all of that investment has been done. All of that stock has been sort of pushed out into the industry and into global inventory. And because of that, the stock is plenty at this point. So now you're getting into the same sort of economic principle of supply and demand that we're all familiar with. That's actually reducing demand, and the supply is stable. So because of that, a lot of technology is becoming much more affordable. That ROR measurement doesn't have to be 3.6% anymore. Now it can be 2, maybe 1.75. And so because of that, a lot of audiovisual suppliers are being very, very competitive with that pricing model. So take advantage of that global inventory. As an example, in any given market, there are 26,000 conventional lights, or what would typically be known as a spotlight or a stage wash spotlight, like a Source 4. Even the LED version, which is lower power consumption, but higher lumens value, which means it can be brighter, which is great, and more color control, which makes it less consumables, less impact on the environment, because we're not consuming as much power or using more consumables to create color. Like, there's all sorts of great advantages of it. But that stock is plenty enough that you can be a little bit more discerning with who you're renting those lights from. And it's one of the things that we actually integrate into our strategy, that we don't ship lights all over North America. We find that it's got too much of a carbon impact for us to send a truck halfway across North America just to deliver some lights, when we know that in any given market, there's 26,000 Source 4 lights that we could tap as a sub-rental from any one of our global supplier partners. So take advantage of that. So that's where you can leverage a little bit of cost savings to be able to add production value and impact onto your event. So the other part of this is understanding that there are 3 major types of equipment out there. They are prosumer, professional, and then premium. And the prosumer, a lot of sort of mid-scale AV companies or smaller AV companies will stock these kinds of lighting instruments or audio equipment or video equipment. It's not to say that it's better or worse. It has a couple of less features and less controllable parameters than the other 2 areas. but they are an affordable option. So when you're looking at AV and production, do you need the professional level or the premium level lighting fixture or audio speaker cabinet or video switcher, whatever it might be? You can actually go with a prosumer model. Now, do I think that you as an event planner and professional should go out and figure out which different brands are prosumer, professional, or premium? Or is it a manufacturer that actually has a range of all of those things? No. But you should understand that there is a price difference between prosumer, professional, and premium. And I'll pick on some moving lights as an example. So there's a prosumer level of lighting instrument. They are less controllable. They color change, they move, they flash, they can do some basic functionality, but you are limited on options. It's sort of DJ mode or not DJ mode. In fact, prosumer lighting instruments are typically used by, smaller scale AV companies, DJs quite a lot. And there's a lot of value in that because you're doing a 1 hour cocktail reception in a small room for 50 people. That's a really good case to use prosumer level technology. Then you move up to professional, which I think the workhorse of the professional industry. They have the right amount of parameters and control. You can get very specific on which color you want that blue to be coming out of the light. You can get very specific on movement. It can save states so that it is easy to recall and say, hey, I want that look for this part of the show and that look for the next part of the show. They are more robust to travel and be banged around. And not that you want to be pushing these lights off of a case or anything, but they are designed to go in and out of road cases, be put up easily, and connect easily to professional systems more so than the prosumer versions. Prosumer are really plug and play, turn it on, you have 5 options, pick one of the 5, and then off you go. And they don't have a very long shelf life, which means that within 1 or 2 years, they're going to degrade to the point where they're no longer functional. Whereas professional grade has all of the features that you would need for, I'd say 70 to 80% of the applications in the events industry world. And they also have the robust longevity to be able to go in and out of road cases pretty easily and not have to be replaced often. Then you get into premium level equipment. Now, premium level equipment is for like the highest end of event creation and entertainment. So things like the Oscars or Super Bowl halftime or Taylor Swift touring around the world, all of the technology on those events needs to be of a premium level. It is enormous precision control of luminosity, of color temperature, of movement, of all of these different parameters, plus the robustness to be able to be stuck on and off of a touring truck twice a day to be able to hop skip across North America, Europe, and the world. And they are of a premium price point. They are preferred by high-end designers and high-end event properties because they have very high-end stakes. And so that's where you will sometimes see those premium things on quotes and budgets. Now, again, that's for the top 10, 20% of the largest and most complex events out there. Is that necessary for your SKO where you have, 500 salespeople and a couple of stakeholders in your leadership team? I tend not to think so unless that is the type of thing that you want to position your event in. So if you're Dreamforce, if you're some big tech rally, and you're facing not only your private and B2B market, but you're also facing the public and the economy as the whole, I kind of think that maybe you'll want to invest in some premium technology rather than just the professional level. You certainly don't want the prosumer level on that. It's very cost effective, and I'm sure you will save 90% of your budget by using prosumer level. But really, when you get to that level of event, understanding that, we need to start the baseline at professional and then move up into the premium as required. That's really important to adding that production value to your event. And so the next strategy that you can apply is a lot of mix and match technology. And I always put this in the context of the launch of the Apple iPhone. The Apple iPhone was taking many, many different things. I think you may have seen, I think there was a meme going around the internet for the last couple of years that there's a picture of an iPhone, and right next to it is all the things that an iPhone includes from the technology that was available in the 80s, from a camera, a video camera, a stereo, a Walkman, a blah, blah, all of these things that were thrown into the iPhone, integrated in such a meaningful and user-friendly way. We're getting to the point in event production where we can start to think of our technology strategy in the same way. Where back in the 80s, you say, well, I'd like to videotape things, so I have to have a camcorder. And I'd like to take pictures of things, so I'd have to have a phone or like a little snap camera. And I want to listen to music on the go. Okay, I'm going to buy myself a Discman or a Walkman or whatever it might be. And the iPhone came along and said, well, I like to take all of those things and put them together into a piece of technology that allows me to do all the things I want to in one single piece of technology. Now, I'll say that I don't think that technology exists yet, that there's no sort of like one box that you can bring on that takes care of lighting, audio, video, and all of the other things that you need to do for production on an event. But we are getting into a place that, because things are so readily affordable and because things have gotten into a high level of supply, that you can be creative how you mix and match technology. So I'll give an obtuse example of using LED and projection. Understanding where to use it and how to use it within an event space is particular, but you can actually mix those technologies for great effect. You can integrate lighting and video together really well. The technology has progressed that different information protocols, whether it's ArtNet, ASCII, just using data like network data to be able to share information between those platforms and those different technology sectors within your event has gotten amazingly integrated so that you can time audio with video and lighting and scenic and all sorts of things within your event. And I'll give the example of there's a group out of Europe that produced a opening ceremony for a large brand in the United States. And they integrated a laser fixture, which has been around since the 80s, a cool, like really hard line laser beam technology, and LED. They were able to build content so that the laser hit the LED screen and actually etched out graphics, seemingly, on the LED screen. And that's really just a matter of timing and pace and intention. But integrating a couple of pieces of technology into a single moment. And so that's what I mean about how you mix and match and integrate it. Yes, there's no box that's going to make all of that happen. That's still 5 or 6 pieces of technology that are all working together. But those improved protocols, those improved bits of computer language and networking infrastructure have made it so that you can integrate your lights to time with the content that's hitting the LED screen at the same time so that it all feels like a seamless experience and adds a lot of production value based on the experience that creates. This is, again, a really big chance to be uber creative. Think about what shapes, what textures, what moods you can create with existing technology. So, no, your screen doesn't have to be, because LED tiles are modular, it doesn't have to be a rectangle. Yes, it's easy to go 16:9, which is a typical widescreen format that you probably see on your laptop at this moment. That's pretty easy to achieve, But you can also create shapes that are not attached to each other or incongruous. You could create squares and triangles and curves, either convex or concave, so that you can add depth and dimension to your scenic design using LED technology or video technology. And then think about content on that screen. That's where your real investment should be coming from. So whether or not that's a 16:9 flat screen, or if it's a 40-foot wide by 10-foot tall flat rectangle, or curved or broken up into little bits and pieces, think about how that content's going to play out on that video surface. And so I'll give the example of, I think it's the Foo Fighters. So the Foo Fighters have a big LED screen on their tour right now, and it's sitting in the background. But they really thought about how could we add depth and dimension to our stage design without having to build a lot of scenic or make a lot of changes, physically to the setup. And so their decision, and I thought was really brilliant, was to build an LED screen, but then really invest in the content. So if you go and check these guys out, their recent concert videos, you'll see that they built the content so that it is three-dimensional within the video content. So it's got a lot of depth of field. It's got a lot of forced perspective on it. So when they change an image on their background, it's not just, hey, here's an image of a room. It's of a gigantic, infinite hallway with a lot of physical implied depth to it. And there's a lot of content thought you can put into your sales kickoff or your summit meeting or your investor day, whatever it might be, to add dimensionality. Think of those LED screens that I'm sure you've seen these viral clips of, storefront LED screens on the corner of a building where they have designed sort of depth perception content to be able to trick you into thinking that, oh, there's a dragon on the top of the building, or somebody's coming out of a box that I can see him reaching out across the street. All of that stuff is currently possible on the existing technology. What it takes is a little bit of investment in the content strategy and a little bit more pre-production and really thinking out that story, but leverage that investment. Talking about leveraging investment, remember that your event is a content machine, that you should leverage that after the event. So whether or not it's your keynote speaker or anybody who's showing up on stage, you can add a lot of value to what you're investing in that event in a really good post-event content strategy. Thinking about not only what's on the stage and what's being presented, but the presenters and the people attending, the exhibitors, the sponsors. Like, there is an enormous amount of thought leadership that is coming to your event. And the video technology that is supportive of capturing that content and making it digestible, and the process of post-production has become enormously affordable. Again, think of the pandemic, that post the pandemic, after everybody invested all this recording, editing, and post-production infrastructure for virtual events, this technology is sitting idle in some cases in a lot of audiovisual companies' inventory, and can be used by you to leverage that event as a content machine to grow your following, your community, to further the messages of your event, post that event, leading up to pre-event for your next year. And then finally, the best way I have ever thought of adding value to production in an event is adapting theatricality. And that is really a sense of three things. First of all, timing, pace, and the story. Now, look, your event might be an internal meeting with salespeople. It may be client facing. It may be investor facing, whoever it might be. The first thing you have to start with is the story, is what message are we trying to tell our audience, whether or not that's motivating a sales team, building culture within our organization, trying to motivate our key customers who we've invited onto an event site to be immersed in our story and become super fans and then, of course, buyers, or in the investment and the market community where we're trying to get them invested in our story and getting behind our story. Start with story. And then after that, start thinking about timing and how you pace that story out. I've been in this business for 25 years. And if I had $1 for every time we supported a pretty typical stand and deliver kind of presentation, I would be a very rich person. What's really successful is adding that sense of timing and pace all wrapped in that story to take people on a journey and use the technology in the room to support that story. It's one of the questions I always ask people when they join my organization or when we're looking at a partner. I start to ask them, as an example, what do you think a projector does on site? And I get one of two answers. The first answer is sometimes, it uses digital lens projection technology to pass light through a microchip that changes it into RGB, and then it projects it on the screen, and blah, blah. And then I stop them and say, okay, you're not right for this. But it's the people who say it frames our client's story in high production value. That's what we're always looking for. And I think that's what the point that I'm trying to make here is that all of this technology is readily available. You can use it on your events as you see fit, depending on what your investment strategy and your event channel is. But if it's not backed up with some timing, pace, and framing a story, then no matter how much you invest in production value, it's always going to fall flat. So those are my big things for leveraging technology creatively for creating production value for your events. Just to summarize, I think the inventory globally has settled, if that's the right word, to a place where it's more readily available. Prices are coming down, so you can be a little bit more flexible with design and intention, using shape, using content, and using intentionality to integrate that into a sort of mix and match technology stack. And then framing that all in a little bit of theatricality with timing, pace, and framing a story is going to add production value to your events. And again, the big lesson here is it's not about what you spend on production that will add value to it. It's really about how you use that investment, and that will add value to your production. So stay tuned for more episodes of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast on whatever platform you are listening. Please rate and subscribe. And if you'd like access to further resources, more deep dives on some of the subjects we talk about on the pod, or want to learn more about it, please go to productionvaluematters.com, where you can subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.